brothers that I'm going to share some memories. Well, some people did that this morning, and I'm just going to run down some things. And then I'm going to ask, Gary Shear's going to come up and he's going to do exactly the same thing, and we're hoping that that will prime the pump to get some of you who might want to share some things if, you know, something piques your interest or you'd like to share with the group. One of the first things I remember when I was a pledge, we had to do a pledge formal. It was required. We had to do the declarations. We had to provide the entertainment. Well, Kerry Granger, I don't know if anybody knows Judge Granger in Hutchinson, but he was one of my pledge brothers. And Earl Punk, who was another one of my pledge brothers. We put on a skit. Well, how many of you remember Dean Schillinger? She didn't like our skit. I think that was the first time I was ever told that I should never do something like that. So we put on the chapter got social probation. Now, young undergrads don't understand social probation, but it was a big deal then. And Dean Schillinger carried a very heavy hammer. She didn't like people to be a little bit off color, and we were just a little bit off color. So anyway, I'll leave that alone. One of the other things I mentioned was Health Week. Great memories for all of us, how we went through initiation, reform. That was really the forming of the brotherhood. If you could get through those 5 or 6 days together and then receive your pin, that was a big deal. Health Week was very important to all of us. How many of you remember the marathon bridge tables at Brother Thorne's apartment? Somebody would come home from class, there'd be 4 people playing cards, and somebody'd have to go to class, we'd sit in, we'd just continue playing. You just took over whatever score there was. We played bridge almost day and night in her apartment, and we had a great time doing it. And while I'm talking about Mother Thorne, probably the longest serving house mother we had. I don't know of another one that was any longer than Mom Thorne, but very special lady, and I think all of us owe a great deal of gratitude to that lady for many of the things that we did. There were some things that maybe we didn't agree with her on, but then she didn't agree with us all the time either. But I'll tell you this about Mother Thorne, and she said this many times to us. She would go to house mothers meetings. The house mothers would be all complaining about what their boys were doing and how they were so bad. Mother Thorne never said a word. As far as those house mothers knew, we were perfect. She never said anything out of that house. And I think we all could take a lesson from that we were family, and she didn't share any family outside of the family. So I give her full credit for that. Other things, bathtub purple passion. Made a couple of gallons myself. Had a good time. The blue stamp where we had good. Somebody mentioned Renfro's, having go to hell party at Renfro's. I don't remember going to Renfro's for go to hell, but I do remember the blue stamp. And I wish Schwartz were here tonight so he could show us his short thumb. Does anybody remember the short thumb? Singing bees. Y'all don't do that anymore, but that was a great thing for the AKLs to win every year. We're singing bees. We had a great time doing it. Doing what? Some of us mouthed the words. You're absolutely right, John. Some of us, because Gary Jernigan would stand back there and say, you're not singing, but you know the words and you mouth them. You don't have to sing. But we won. And let me tell you, when you've got 60, 70, 80, 100 guys standing on risers, singing as beautifully as we did, we were impressive folks. And we've always been that way, and that was just another example of how impressive we were. We had a lot of triumphs, we had a lot of tragedies. I'd say not a lot of tragedies, but I remember one in particular. That was the afternoon that Houston Neal died. Forgive me. Several of us were at Renfro's that afternoon, and the rumor went through that Houston Neal had been killed. Coming back to the house and seeing the men standing on the porch, very quiet. It was an afternoon that many of us will remember, and remember well, only because it was brotherhood. It was one of our brothers, and he had died. It was a tough weekend for most of us, and the next week with his family coming down. The funeral was held here because of the relationship that they had with the house. So. And forgive my emotion there, but that was a tough week for me. I remember it very well. Intramural trophies. I'll tell you one little incident that involved me. We won by 1 point. I think it was my sophomore year. I did the backstroke and came in 5th and got 1 point. We won I won the intramural trophy. There was no question in my mind. I did it. So, but those are just a few. One of the I have to mention this, and two more. Saturday night wedding dance in Pilsen and Sunday morning church in Tampa. How many have experienced that? We can't mention an AKO reunion without mentioning Tampa, Kansas for one thing, because the Bezdek family didn't know they just had 5 boys. They had a bunch of boys. We were always there for certain things. So it was a lot of fun to go to Tampa and be a part of the Bezdek family for a weekend. But you didn't sleep in. You went to church the next morning. So, be that as it may. One of the other things was homecoming decorations. Jim Brown and I were chair of the homecoming decorations, and I want to say it was probably the homecoming of '65. And we played University of Nebraska, Omaha. The decorations were in the yard. We had built 2 big backdrops. And this is not politically correct when I'm going to say it, that we had a light that came up on this side and it said the only good Indian, the light would come down, and the light would come up, and it would say would be a dead Indian. Well, we had figured out a cannon that we had a rubber hose running from the gas stove in the kitchen up to a piece of pipe of some kind. I can't tell you. Whoever designed this sucker was a genius. It fired once. It worked 1 time, and that was when the judges were driving by. The AKLs have been really lucky in a lot of ways, guys. Just know that. So it worked 1 time. We had a really good time decorating that. I remember being so angry because nobody was working the night before, and I woke up the next morning, it was all set up and all done. So I think the pledges did a really good job that night. Well, I said I had 2 more. I have 1 more I have to mention. There is still a question as to what happened to the Barracuda. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Let's see, I didn't see Mike's hand up. Did Mike come tonight? Anyway, for those of you who don't know the story, I'm not going to tell it. So you'll just have to figure it out. I'm going to ask Gary to come up and do a little bit of sharing as well. And if anybody else wants to, we've certainly got some time. And if you'd like to come to the mic or just sit at your tables and share, that's what we're all about. So Gary,